who were the real pirates of the Caribbean. Welcome to Collapse, where history comes to life and every video immerses you in the destinies of those who shaped the world. Today, set sail for the Caribbean Sea, where the Golden Age of Piracy was born. Men and women who, weary of poverty or injustice, plunged into a life of looting, freedom, and blood. They bore names that still send shivers down the spine: Blackbeard, Calico Jack, Anne Bonny, or Bartholomew Roberts. Their fast ships sowed terror, attacking Spanish galleons, fortified trading posts, and sea routes laden with gold and spices. Yet, behind the legend of the Black Flags lies another reality, that of floating communities where more egalitarian rules were sometimes invented than in the kingdoms of Europe. But before embarking on a new adventure, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. Thank you, and have a great journey. Around the middle of the 15th century, the world was entering a period of profound political, economic, and technological upheaval. Europe, marked by the end of the Hundred Years' War from 1337 to 1453, and the progressive consolidation of its kingdoms, was being redrawn around expanding national monarchies. In the east, the Ottoman Empire, strengthened by the conquest of Constantinople in 1453, extended its influence in the Mediterranean and on trade routes. In Asia, the Ming dynasty dominated China, while the transition to the Qing dynasty would not appear until the 17th century. In the Americas, before the arrival of the Europeans, the Aztec and Inca empires remained sovereign, rich in traditions and resources. In Western Europe, Portugal led the way in long-distance maritime expeditions. Under the impetus of Henry the Navigator, the Portuguese explored the African coasts as early as the beginning of the 15th century, establishing trading posts and controlling gold, ivory, and spices, while bypassing the Mediterranean held by the Italians and Ottomans. Soon, Castile followed this momentum, financing navigators willing to push the boundaries of the known world. In 1492, Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic, hoping to reach the Indies by sailing west, and landed on a Caribbean island. This event placed the Atlantic at the center of global exchanges and marked a decisive geopolitical shift. Spain took shape with the Union of Castile and Aragon, sealed by the marriage of Isabella and Ferdinand in 1469, strengthening royal power and the financing of expeditions. In France, the monarchy was consolidated under Louis XV from 1461 to 1483 and his successors. In England, the Wars of the Roses from 1455 to 1487 paved the way for the Tudor dynasty. The Italian merchant republics, Venice and Genoa, maintained strong influence through Mediterranean trade, while the Holy Roman Empire remained fragmented into rival principalities, soon drawn into the religious and political conflicts of the 16th century. This dynamic was accompanied by a naval revolution. The Iberian shipyards perfected the caravel, lighter and more maneuverable than galleons. Equipped with lateen sails and a stern rudder, it could sail against the wind and undertake long voyages. The magnetic compass, partly inherited from Chinese techniques, facilitated navigation on the high seas, while onboard artillery-armed ships for defense or attack. The first militarized convoys appeared, protecting galleons from pirates and rival powers. These innovations multiplied the capacity of European kingdoms to undertake distant expeditions and inaugurated an era of unprecedented naval confrontations. The rise of Atlantic navigation created a world economy centered on Western Europe, dominated by Spain and Portugal. Ships mainly brought back silver from the New World, enriching the Spanish treasury and boosting international trade. The Portuguese experimented with sugar monoculture in Madeira, then implemented it in the Antilles, where the climate favored mass production. For the plantations, Europeans resorted to the African slave trade, initiating an irreversible system of deportation and human exploitation from the 15th century onward. This economic rise and competition for resources heightened political and religious tensions. In 1517, Martin Luther published his 95 Theses, sparking the Protestant Reformation and a lasting divide between Catholics and Protestants. The rivalry between the Habsburgs, masters of the Holy Roman Empire in Spain, and the Valois of France marked European and colonial diplomacy. England shifted from Catholicism to Anglicanism under Henry VIII, then experienced religious fluctuations. France was shaken by the wars of religion from 1562 to 1598, pitting Huguenots against Catholics and weakening the monarchy. As early as 1493, the papal bull Inter Caetera granted the Iberian crowns exclusive zones over discovered lands. In 1494, the Treaty of Tordesillas drew a line separating Spanish dominion to the west and Portuguese to the east. Other powers rejected this division and developed the theory of a free sea, paving the way for privateering and piracy attacks against Iberian convoys. By the mid-16th century, the Atlantic became the major axis of trade, relegating the Mediterranean to the background. Spanish fleets, laden with silver from Peru and Mexico, flocked to Seville, making the Iberian Peninsula a hub of global commerce. England and France sought to insert themselves despite treaties. Meanwhile, the Ottomans strengthened their control of the eastern Mediterranean, installing garrisons in North Africa and the Levant. Maritime rivalry, fueled by the abundance of goods transported, paved the way for an era of privateers unofficially supported by states. Control of the spice route aroused strong desires. The Portuguese sought to circumvent Africa to reach the Indian Ocean and established themselves in Goa in 1510, forging links with various Asian ports. The Ottomans dominated the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, and strengthened their influence in Yemen. Ming China retained significant economic weight thanks to its silks, porcelains, and luxury goods prized by Europeans, while Arab merchants played a central role in the circulation of goods between Southeast Asia and the Mediterranean. Before the arrival of the conquistadors, the Aztec and Inca empires respectively dominated Mesoamerica and the Andes mountain range. The Aztec Empire, centered on Tenochtitlan, impressed with its military might, its tribute imposed on vassal cities, and its monumental urbanism. The Inca Empire, with its capital Cuzco and citadels like Machu Picchu, controlled a vast network of roads and an economic system based on redistribution, despite the constraints of the terrain. Religion, rituals, and clan structures formed the foundations of these societies, soon to be disrupted. The Iberian states consolidated their overseas presence to secure the supply of precious metals and exotic goods. Gold and silver financed European wars, while the growing demand for sugar, tobacco, and dyes attracted powerful merchants to Seville, Lisbon, and Antwerp. Great banking families like the Fuggers and Welsers financed colonial enterprises in exchange for privileges. These dynamics laid the foundations of the First Globalization. In this context, European rivalries intensified. To weaken their opponents without open warfare, sovereigns resorted to privateering and issued letters of marque. In England, under Elizabeth I, the Sea Dogs targeted Spanish cargoes. In France, some Huguenot navigators did the same, while the Dutch Republic, in its struggle against Spain, armed its ships to break the Iberian monopoly. The oceans became a theater of indirect confrontations, where each victory brought strategic gain. As the year 1600 approached, Europe was reshaped by maritime expansion and politico-religious disputes. The Atlantic was becoming the decisive trade artery, while Spain and Portugal attempted to protect their colonial possessions against other kingdoms. Naval innovations allowed faster crossings, facilitating the flow of goods, soldiers, and missionaries. Atlantic ports such as Seville, Lisbon, Bristol, or Rouen concentrated naval armament and the transit of gold, silver, and spices. The rise of Protestantism and the Catholic response heightened competition, giving colonization an ideological dimension. At the dawn of the 17th century, the world was shifting towards a new era with strategic and economic stakes, and conflicts were brewing. In 1492, Christopher Columbus's ships reached the Caribbean islands, marking a turning point for the crown of Castile. Monarchs Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon saw this as a new route to Asia. Colonists, soldiers, and administrators quickly flocked there. The Taínos, a peaceful people, suffered under the encomienda system established in the 1490s and codified at the beginning of the 16th century. They had to work for the Spaniards in exchange for protection and religious instruction. In reality, they were forced to extract gold and cultivate land under harsh conditions. Diseases from Europe, repressions, and crushed revolts accelerated their decline. After the fall of the Aztec Empire in 1521 and the Inca Empire in the 1530s, the crown's interest shifted to the mainland. But before this expansion, the Caribbean islands served as a rear base. Santo Domingo, founded in 1496 on Hispaniola, became a nerve center. San Juan de Puerto Rico, established in the early 16th century, and Cartagena de Indias, founded in 1533, gained strategic importance with arsenals, shipyards, and trade fairs. Gold and silver fueled the treasury of Charles V and then Philip II. Exploitation exhausted the natives, replaced by African captives. Administrators sought to reinforce colonial discipline while fearing the ambitions of rival powers. In 1503, the Crown founded the Casa de Contratación in Seville to centralize the management of colonial flows, registration of ships, royal taxes, regulation of trade. It implemented the Sistema de Flotas, convoys escorted by armed galleons transporting gold, silver, and goods from Veracruz or Nombre de Dios to Havana, then to Seville. The city became an international financial center where Italian bankers, Flemish traders, and European agents converged. To protect this system, Spain built fortifications, installed garrisons, and formed seasoned crews, though it failed to prevent attacks by interlopers, challenging its maritime monopoly. Despite monarchic vigilance, outsiders appeared in the Atlantic. As early as the beginning of the 16th century, Breton fishermen frequented Newfoundland for cod, while Basques skirted Central America, exchanging skins and exotic products with local populations. Having become interlopers, these sailors settled in poorly monitored coves, evading the Casa de Contratacion's taxes and thriving through smuggling. Meanwhile, the continuous arrival of African slaves increased ethnic diversity. Some fugitives, called Maroons, founded independent communities in mountainous and forested areas, difficult to subdue. Thus, Spanish authority had to contend with the interlopers, Maroon resistance, and the growing threat of piracy, a prelude to privateering supported by letters of marque. With the Sistema de Flotas, the crown intensified mining exploitation. The silver deposits of Zacatecas in Mexico and Cerro Rico de Potosí in Bolivia fed massive shipments of ingots and pieces of eight, the economic pillar of Spain. Veracruz became the main Mexican export port, while Nombre de Dios and Portobelo served as transit points for Peruvian loot transported by overland convoys on the Camino Real. Storms and delays favored sabotage and theft. To secure these flows, the Crown recruited specialized officers, trained a corps of colonial gunners, and issued anti-fraud regulations. This priority on precious metals reinforced the Spanish grip, but frustrated colonists focused on agriculture and sugar. Pressure increased as other kingdoms coveted these riches. During the first half of the 16th century, several indigenous communities refused tribute and denounced the abuses of the encomenderos. These revolts, severely repressed, prompted the crown to strengthen religious control and regulation of the encomienda. Militarily, it equipped garrisons with arquebuses and increased cavalry. At the same time, the Habsburg-Valois rivalry extended to the seas. French corsairs, encouraged by their king, attacked convoys in poorly defended ports, especially around the Antilles. These raids demonstrated the vulnerability of the Spanish trade monopoly and prompted Madrid to fortify the coasts and systematically escort gold and silver shipments. In 1568, an incident illustrates the tenacity of English adventurers determined to undermine Spanish hegemony. John Hawkins, a merchant and privateer, arrives near San Juan de Ulua, a fortified port in the Gulf of Mexico. Officially, he comes to repair damages and trade, but his real objective is to infiltrate the transatlantic trade. His squadron includes several ships, including the Judith, commanded by a young captain destined for an extraordinary fate, Francis Drake. Warned, the Spanish authorities maneuver to trap them. Negotiations cease when a Castilian fleet blocks the bay. The English ships come under heavy fire. Hawkins loses several boats and flees aboard the Minion, while Drake manages to escape with the Judith, damaged but still afloat. The failed attack on San Juan de Ulua costs many sailors and contraband cargoes, but it propels Drake to the forefront. His audacity in challenging the Spanish monopoly appeals to Queen Elizabeth I. Although Spain and England directly confront each other here for the first time, the episode reveals the fragility of the convoys and foreshadows the escalation of hostilities. From then on, preparations for revenge, privateering expeditions, and piracy multiply in the Caribbean, while the Atlantic becomes a battlefield where the quest for American treasures knows no respite. Between 1560 and 1620, Protestant privateers emerged who challenged the Spanish monarchy's trade monopoly on New World routes. The papacy and the King of Spain then defended an exclusive system for the benefit of Castile. Opponents, especially in England, the Netherlands, and certain regions of France, fueled by the Reformation and political ambitions, sought to enrich themselves at the expense of the Spanish Empire. Protestant sovereigns issued letters of marque officially authorizing attacks on Iberian ships and ports. These privateering wars developed under Elizabeth I in England, Henry IV in France, and in the United Provinces. The letters of marque, called letters of reprisal in England, gave privateers the right to seize Spanish or Portuguese goods while giving a share to the crown. Motivated by the lure of profit and social ascent, sailors embarked on these risky ventures. Elizabeth I discreetly encouraged these actions to weaken Philip II and enrich her kingdom. Religious rivalries served as moral justification, with privateers seeing Spain as the armed wing of Catholicism. The line between piracy and privateering remained blurred, as all prizes had to be validated by a court of admiralty. Francis Drake, born around 1540 in Devon, embodies these English privateers. Coming from a modest family, he learned navigation on merchant ships. In 1567, he participated in John Hawkins's expedition and discovered the illegal slave trade in Hispaniola. After the attack on San Juan de Ulua in 1568, he harbored a deep hatred towards Spain. During the 1570s, armed with letters of marque from Elizabeth Thurthofer, he multiplied attacks in the Caribbean, bringing enormous treasures to the crown. Between 1577 and 1580, he completed his circumnavigation and captured the galleon Cacafuego, laden with gold and silver, reinforcing Elizabeth's power. Drake's success stimulated French buccaneering, especially in Dieppe and La Rochelle. Private ship owners financed expeditions against Iberian galleons, encouraged by Huguenot nobles. Pierre de Montbars, nicknamed the Exterminator of the Spaniards, distinguished himself by his violent raids in the New World colonies. Driven by a personal grudge against the Spanish monarchy, he acquired a formidable reputation, his name circulating in the reports of Spanish survivors. The Dutch distinguished themselves in the Protestant privateering through the Vaderguzen, or Sea Beggars, initially active in the English Channel and the North Atlantic, then up to the Iberian waters. Engaged in the 80 Years' War from 1568 to 1648 against the Spanish Habsburgs, they viewed piracy as an extension of their fight for the independence of the United Provinces. Supported by William of Orange, they sometimes obtained letters of reprisal legitimizing the capture of ships loaded with wheat, silver, or woolens. Temporarily settled in some French ports, they benefited from the support of Huguenot governors, hostile to the Catholic bloc. Spain, already under English pressure on the transatlantic routes, also had to face their attacks disrupting trade to Flanders. This dual threat accelerated the militarization of European navigation and imposed a climate of insecurity marked by religious conflict. In France, the religious wars, which began in 1562, favored anti-Spanish privateering. Huguenot lords, lacking resources, supported piracy enterprises disguised as privateering expeditions. La Rochelle, a Protestant stronghold, became a major home port. Captures of Spanish galleons financed weapons and fortifications. Meanwhile, some Catholic sailors allied with Spain to fight the Huguenots. Basque and Breton privateers, indifferent to religious quarrels, joined either side depending on opportunities. This competition led to an escalation of violence at sea, where greed, faith, and political strategies intertwined. The peak of tensions between England and Spain occurred in 1588, when Philip II launched the Invincible Armada to invade England and overthrow Elizabeth I. The naval confrontation, especially in the English Channel, ended in a Spanish defeat due to storms and English tactics. This victory provided respite to the Queen, who increased her support for the expeditions of Drake and other captains. Plymouth, Falmouth, and other ports became bases for English sailors eager to raid Spanish colonies. Spain, weakened, had to focus its resources on the defense of the mainland and the war in the Netherlands, while Protestant privateering intensified. Attempts at peace failed. In 1604, England and Spain signed the Treaty of London, officially ending their conflict. However, many captains ignored the agreement and continued their raids, citing old reprisals. Holland, still at war against the Habsburgs, maintained maritime hostility and encouraged privateering against the Iberian monarchy. France, weakened by its internal wars, allowed its ports to serve as stops in exchange for taxes or a share of the captures. Between 1605 and 1620, Protestant privateers continued to strike the Spanish fleet, bringing a constant flow of gold and silver to rival sovereigns. These wars of privateering, fueled by religious conflicts and economic ambitions, reshaped the balance of power on the oceans without establishing lasting peace. Around the early 1620s, Tortuga Island, off the northwest coast of Hispaniola, became a haven for hunters, adventurers, and mercenaries. Its silhouette, resembling a turtle shell, hid rugged terrain and tropical forests, difficult for the Spanish garrisons to access. Groups from France, England, or Holland settled there to exploit local wildlife resources. The Caribs, indigenous inhabitants of the Antilles, maintained relationships of either mutual assistance or mistrust with them. The presence of wild cattle and pigs, descended from animals that escaped early colonies, offered buccaneers abundant food and a trade product. These hunters excelled at capturing, smoking, and selling the meat, called boucan, an Amerindian term for this cooking technique. This is where the name buccaneers comes from. Gradually, they formed small, independent communities, living by hunting herds and illicit trade. Smoking meat on a grate made from guaiac or acacia wood, placed over a low fire fed with green wood, was how boucan was done. The salted pieces gained a distinct flavor and could be kept for several weeks. The hides found buyers among merchants for saddlery and various accessories. This discreet economy, based on barter and sales of meat and leather, allowed the buccaneers to partly escape the Spanish monopoly and ensure their subsistence. The Caribbeans passed on their knowledge of coastal navigation and tides, while the African Maroons, runaway slaves, found refuge on the island. In exchange for their agricultural and artisanal skills, they obtained food and protection. Thus was born a unique cultural blending, making Tortuga a space for social experimentation. Over time, the island attracted more renegades and outcasts, fleeing the authority of colonial powers. The Spaniards, official masters of Hispaniola, launched expeditions to dislodge them, but the rugged terrain protected the buccaneers. The distance from the South American continent further complicated constant surveillance. The international context also played in their favor. The 30 Years' War between 1618 and 1648, notably opposing France and Spain, had repercussions that reached the Caribbean. In this climate, the buccaneers, with no fixed loyalty, made temporary alliances with rival governors to obtain weapons, gunpowder, and provisions. The subsequent arrival of French officers, like Levasseur, marked a political turning point. Fortifications were constructed, initiating the island's subjugation. The figure of the buccaneer inspired a particular image in Europe, where they were described as austere hunters, dressed in skins and armed with long rifles. In reality, they led an unstable life, relying on improvised cooperatives to hunt and preserve meat. The scant profits were shared according to variable agreements. Some, weary of Spanish pressure and attracted by the wealth of merchant ships, turned to piracy. With light boats, they discreetly attacked poorly protected fleets to seize provisions, textiles, or precious metals. This transition from boucan to illegal privateering was gradual and motivated by the hope of quick enrichment. The Brethren of the Coast established a cooperative organization. Each man participated in decision-making, and the distribution of loot was negotiated collectively, an equality that attracted new followers, breaking away from monarchical hierarchies. In this context, the pound-for-pound pact appeared. Temporary agreements for a specific expedition dissolved after the operation. The gains varied between resold goods and acquired prestige. The groups operated flexibly. The captain was elected and could be replaced if found incompetent. This lack of fixed hierarchy contrasted with royal armies, where rank depended on birth. On the island of Tortuga, an experienced hunter could lead an expedition if they convinced their peers. Sometimes, Francophone and Anglophone buccaneers collaborated, combining their strengths despite national rivalries. This brotherhood astonished travelers, who recounted it in their journals, contributing to the legend of Tortuga as a haven for adventurers. The 30 Years' War accentuated these dynamics. The conflicts between France, Spain, and other powers extended to the Antilles, where each sought to deprive the other of the New World's riches. Tortuga became strategic. Without an official cause, the buccaneers chose the camp offering the best conditions. French governors, established in St. Kitts and then Saint-Domingue, sometimes entrusted them with harassment missions against the Spaniards in exchange for letters of commission that legitimized certain attacks. But the line remained blurred between legal privateering and piracy, especially during truce times. England, attentive, sometimes discreetly supported those who hindered Spanish ambitions. In this shifting game of alliances, the relative prosperity of the buccaneers rested on their adaptability and mastery of maritime routes. In the daily organization of the buccaneers, the ties with the Carib Indians and the Maroon slaves went beyond trade. Alliances were formed, sometimes through marriages, reinforcing cultural diversity. Amerindian, African, and European traditions intertwined: cuisine, skin treatment, healing rites. Inspired by the Caribbeans, the buccaneers perfected their hunting techniques, while the Maroons shared their agricultural knowledge. Despite tensions related to cattle theft or trap stealing, mutual aid dominated on Tortuga Island, where survival demanded solidarity. Impromptu feasts brought these communities together, sometimes with the presence of Carib shamans, blending ritual chants and smoked meats. A notable story is that of the Salt and Pepper Banquet of the 1640s. French and English, after seizing a Spanish ship loaded with cattle, shared a feast on the beach of Tortuga. They seasoned the meat with salt and red pepper, cooked it over boucans, drank tafia, and sang in their own languages. All night, European enemies became table companions. This anecdote illustrates the fluidity of identities and the unpredictability of alliances, foreshadowing the brotherhood of the coast that would mark the history of Atlantic piracy. The English conquest of Jamaica in 1655 marked a turning point in the Caribbean basin. The operation was led by William Penn and Robert Venables, mandated by Cromwell. The island, then Spanish, was only weakly defended. The English troops, supported by the filibusters seasoned in skirmishes and navigation, facilitated its capture. After the Spaniards fled to the mountains, or Cuba, the colony remained fragile, little labor and few infrastructures. The filibusters became indispensable as fighters, scouts, and sailors, knowing the secret routes and anchorages. Governor Edward D'Oyly, to stabilize the island, offered them provisional privateering commissions, profit shares, and settlement near the ports. This semi-legal recognition paved the way for the Golden Age of maritime raids. Port Royal, established on a peninsula opposite Kingston, became a key stopover since the conquest. Taverns and brothels thrived, the slave trade emerged, and artisans, carpenters, and blacksmiths flocked to maintain the ships. Vast docks were erected, and the town quickly gained a disreputable reputation, nicknamed the most debauched city in the world. But Port Royal was also a commercial crossroads. Ships passed through the pass to exchange sugars, spices, and hides, or embark on plundering expeditions. Governor D'Oyly handed out privateering commissions, providing a legal framework for attacks against the Spanish. This system allowed the crown to harass its rivals without an open war, making the filibusters an essential cog. In return, the administration received the Royal Tenth, funding infrastructures, garrisons, and enriching the local economy. Port Royal became a place where loot turned into jewelry, clothing, imported alcohols, and domestic slaves, attracting traders, lenders, and ship owners. The logistics relied on adapted boats, canoes inspired by Amerindian models, discreet and maneuverable, shallow draft boats, ideal for shallow waters. These ships enabled lightning raids followed by a quick escape. The filibusters often sailed at night, guided by their knowledge of the coasts. Sparsely equipped with cannons, they favored muskets, sabers, and homemade grenades. Their effectiveness depended on surprise and mastery of the terrain. During this period, the Franco-Spanish rivalry and the tensions between England and the Netherlands plunged the Caribbean Sea into chaos. The filibusters, often serving England but quick to switch sides, took advantage of these conflicts. Alliances were made and broken according to opportunities. In this context, Jamaica, led by Governor Edward D'Oyly, became a refuge for sea fortunes. In Port Royal, the filibuster captains recounted their exploits, displayed their trophies, and negotiated new partnerships, attracting adventurers and crooks in an electric atmosphere. Port Royal quickly established political structures, vice admiralty courts to judge captures, regularly renewed privateering commissions, and taxes paid by the captains. These revenues financed defense and rudimentary fortifications against the Spaniards. Under the authority of D'Oyly, the city became a quasi-institutionalized base for privateering, where buccaneers appeared both as respected veterans and as indispensable bandits for regional stability. The prosperity attracted a motley crowd: former soldiers, unscrupulous merchants, freed slaves, and fallen nobles. Money flowed quickly, lost in gambling and alcohol, or used to buy more powerful ships. The city's scandalous reputation, duels, kidnappings, violence, worried some crown representatives, but the high profits ensured the survival of the system. In this climate emerged Roche Bras, a former French soldier captured and then escaped from a Spanish jail in Cuba by bribing a jailer. Arriving in Port Royal, he used his knowledge of Spanish defenses to provide detailed maps to the buccaneer captains. He then participated in a nighttime raid on the north coast of Cuba. According to legend, his crew seized crates of precious metals in an isolated depot before disappearing. The operation's success, relayed in the taverns, boosted his fame and attracted other captains eager to join him. Roche Bras thus illustrated the dynamics of Port Royal, a cosmopolitan, opportunistic place constantly turned toward adventure, where buccaneers served Jamaica's interests against Spain. The figure of Roche Bras illustrates an era when the line between autonomous adventurer and servant of the crown remained blurred. Governor D'Oyly tolerated these expeditions as long as they served English interests, while clandestinely encouraging them to weaken Spain and seize its resources. This double game offered buccaneers relative freedom, but obliged them to be cautious. A poorly perceived attack could jeopardize diplomatic relations. In this tension, Port Royal and Jamaica prospered. The colony enriched itself through maritime captures and slave markets, while having to justify the legitimacy of these gains to the metropolis and foreign powers. The main legal tool, privateering commissions, ensured the king received a share of the profits and provided a legal framework for the confiscation of enemy property, but they did not prevent excesses. Buccaneers still conducted operations akin to piracy. Between 1655 and 1670, this decade was marked by a surge of wealth and daring. The tensions between strategic interests and the desire for independence fueled the rise of privateering. The names of Penn, Venables, D'Oyly, and Roche-Bras symbolize this era where gold, glory, and individual exploits animated a port in constant tumult that no authority could contain. Sir Henry Morgan appeared in the Caribbean at a time when the boundaries between privateer, buccaneer, and bandit remained blurred. In 1670, England and Spain signed the Treaty of Madrid to pacify the region and prohibit attacks on Spanish convoys. But the ambiguity of its implementation and the slowness of communications allowed Morgan to continue his raids. He used this to organize the famous sack of Panama in 1671. Morgan acted within the framework of international rivalries under the more or less tacit supervision of the colonial English government in Jamaica. Officially, the treaty prohibited aggressions, but some governors allowed the buccaneers to operate. Morgan then gathered a mixed fleet, light ships, riverboats, and artillery-armed ships. Later, he would claim that he was unaware of the treaty's strength during his preparation. The starting point was the mouth of the Chagres River on the Caribbean coast. This river crossed the isthmus to the city of Panama, the regional capital of the Viceroyalty of Peru, located on the Pacific coast. Morgan knew the city was rich, vital for the transit of gold and silver, and poorly defended by land. The Spaniards had concentrated their cannons on the maritime front. Before Panama, Morgan had to capture the fort of San Lorenzo, which controlled access to the Chagres. At the beginning of 1671, his experienced buccaneers besieged the place. After several days of combat, the fortress fell, the defenders were killed or fled into the jungle. Morgan left a garrison there, then launched with the rest of his troops into the overland march towards Panama. The forced march through the dense vegetation represents a logistical challenge. Tropical humidity, lack of roads, and sporadic attacks by Spaniards or Indian allies slow down the progress. Supplies quickly run out, forcing Morgan's men to hunt, gather wild fruits, or slaughter cattle. Despite these hardships, Morgan maintains discipline by threatening deserters and promising a generous loot. Upon reaching the outskirts of Panama, he discovers that the Spanish army, composed of soldiers and cavalry, defends the city's gates. Less equipped but accustomed to skirmishes and quick maneuvers, the buccaneers take advantage of the rough terrain to repel the assaults. The Spanish cavalry suffers heavy losses and retreats behind the walls, unable to withstand the enemy's heavy fire. The capture of the city is brutal. The surroundings are set on fire, buildings are destroyed, and Morgan orders the burning of ships in the bay to prevent any Spanish reinforcements. The population suffers pillaging and ransoms. The buccaneers seize gold, silver, and precious objects. Estimates of the loot vary, some speaking of several 100,000 gold coins, others of a more modest but considerable sum for the time. For a week, houses, churches, and warehouses are ransacked. No galleons are found, as most are already in Peru or en route to Spain. Morgan nonetheless obtains additional ransoms by threatening to burn the remaining districts. The episode, famously known as the Sack of Panama, symbolizes for the Spanish crown the peak of a piracy gone out of control, even as peace was supposed to be maintained. Upon returning, the affair causes a diplomatic scandal. Spain invokes the freshly signed Treaty of Madrid and demands reparation from Charles II of England. To appease the situation, Morgan is summoned to London. Officially arrested in Jamaica and then transferred to England, he is treated with respect, suggesting a political maneuver rather than genuine imprisonment. The trial in London is highly publicized. The accusations focus on the treaty violation and the atrocities against Spanish subjects. But Morgan enjoys influential support from the Admiralty and the political world, pleased at having weakened Spain. The defense cites ignorance of the treaty, or its lack of clarity, with some chroniclers suspecting the English crown of having maintained this ambiguity to strengthen its positions in the Caribbean. Morgan is ultimately acquitted and knighted, provoking Spain's anger. England sends an ambiguous message, signing peace while rewarding a looter of the Spanish Empire. The official justification lies in his role in the English colonial strategy. Jamaica, which he secured against the Spaniards, remains an economic asset, and it's better to have him as an ally than as a rival. Back in the Caribbean, Morgan becomes lieutenant governor and then commander of the militias in Jamaica. His mission is to suppress piracy without letters of marque, but his position is delicate. His former companions see him as a traitor, while the authorities demand exemplary firmness. To appease both sides, he shows leniency towards some former buccaneers while publicly condemning illegal piracy. Meanwhile, Morgan settles on a sugarcane plantation near Spanish Town. The operation, based on servile labor, and the rum trade assure him a comfortable fortune. He maintains a court mixing former privateers and royal officers. His relations with Governor Thomas Lynch, who served several terms at the end of the 17th century, are tense. Lynch reproaches him for his compromises, while Morgan accuses Lynch of seeking to appropriate his prestige and scheming to oust him. The tensions between Morgan and Lynch lead to a series of complaints and counter-complaints, described as a judicial duel. Morgan claims to be the victim of a conspiracy intended to slander him, while Lynch accuses him of turning a blind eye to the smuggling of slaves and rum. According to rumors, Morgan allegedly threatened to reveal compromising letters involving high officials, while Lynch presented witnesses who could recount Morgan's atrocities in Panama and elsewhere. The English crown, tired of these rivalries, attempted several times to reconcile them to maintain the colony's stability. Meanwhile, Port Royal is experiencing a rapid development. This port city in southern Jamaica is known for its taverns, brothels, gambling houses, and slave markets. It attracts merchants, adventurers, and sailors from around the world. Morgan, settled in his plantation, regularly visits for his business. Described as the Babylon of the Caribbean, the city is prosperous but fragile. Its buildings constructed on sand are tightly packed, and the wooden docks require constant maintenance. The site's fragility is confirmed in 1692, when a violent earthquake, followed by a tsunami, engulfs much of Port Royal. Hundreds of inhabitants disappear in minutes. Stories describe scenes of chaos, and official reports mention several thousand deaths. The event marks a turning point for Jamaica. Port Royal, a symbol of maritime power, is annihilated. Kingston, on the other side of the bay, then begins to develop. Morgan, already sick, is dismayed watching the catastrophe. The dispatches sent to Europe describe this disaster as a divine punishment against debauchery and vice, while the colonial authorities establish new security measures. The daily life of pirates at the dawn of the Golden Age of Piracy, between the late 17th century and early 18th, is based on a collective contract called chasse-partie. This document, sometimes written and signed by the crew, sets the distribution of loot. The captain receives 2 to 3 times the share of a simple sailor, the quartermaster an intermediate share. It also provides compensation for injuries, such as an indemnity for the loss of an eye or a hand. These provisions, absent in the Merchant Navy or the Royal Navy, strengthen solidarity and bravery during boarding. The contract serves as a reference for resolving disputes related to gold, goods, or ransoms, with several copies often kept to prevent forgery. The democracy on board derives from this system. The captain is elected and can be removed by the crew, unlike the absolute authority of royal navies. The quartermaster, also elected, represents the sailors, resolves disputes, and limits the captain's power. In combat, the latter retains some decision-making freedom, but outside of action, the voice of the quartermaster prevails. This dual power creates a balance. The captain embodies courage and command, while the quartermaster protects the crew against tyranny. Many mutinies reported at that time are actually just the application of this rule. A vote can at any time overturn the captain's authority. The discipline on board follows principles defined in the chasse-partie contract. Before a boarding, pirates scuttle the drink or limit alcohol to avoid drunkenness in battle. Consumption remains tolerated at sea, but never during action. Gambling is prohibited during a raid to avoid conflicts and distractions. These rules reflect essential pragmatism. Surviving and gathering trophies requires a minimum order. Punishments are decided collectively. Flogging or putting in irons can be voted by the crew. Internal executions are rare, as every sailor counts. The extreme sanction is to abandon the guilty on a deserted island, equivalent to banishment. Violence exists, but solidarity conditions survival. Pirate crews are marked by their diversity. Unlike European royal navies, they welcome freed Africans, Native Americans, and deserters from various nations: French, English, Dutch, Spanish. Each brings useful skills: navigation, languages, medicine, carpentry. This plurality engenders practical tolerance, born of the necessity to fight better-equipped adversaries. Myths persist, but must be nuanced. The parrot sometimes exists as merchandise or a companion, but its image is exaggerated. The wooden leg and the eye patch are more symbolic than a generalized reality, although injuries are frequent. The black flag with a skull, the Jolly Roger, spreads in the 18th century as a symbol of terror. Previously, pirates displayed red banners or flags mimicking colonial fleets. The Jolly Roger eventually prevails as it allowed saving time. Its sight meant no mercy would be given in case of resistance. Life on the deck remains harsh. The food is limited to quickly spoiled salted rations, sea biscuits infested with weevils, salted beef, or pork. Sometimes, the crew fishes or pillages provisions from merchant ships. Freshwater is a constant problem, often spoiled by poor storage. Diseases, especially scurvy, physically mark the pirates. Some captains resupply at secret outposts through bribes, but scarcity dominates. The quarters are cramped. Pirates sleep in hammocks and keep their meager belongings: clothes, weapons, compass, small treasures. Space is reserved for cannons, provisions, and goods. Close quarters breed tensions, contained by the quartermaster. Camaraderie and games pace the collective life, but grudges and disputes can quickly escalate. Ship maintenance, enemy threats, and the difficulty of finding refuge impose a discipline where everyone depends on each other. Contrary to the cliches, pirates do not spend all their time pillaging. Long days of waiting go by, scanning the horizon. Weapons and sails are maintained. The deck is caulked. Music, songs, stories, or skill games break the monotony and bond the crew. Some keep coded journals, exchange itineraries, or sell navigation information. Solidarity exists, but alliances are fragile. A big loot is enough to break loyalty. The injured are entrusted to a surgeon if the crew has one. Some are real professionals on the run, others just barbers. Their tools are limited to a saw for amputations, rum for disinfection, and some bandages. The dead are consigned to the sea, wrapped in a weighted shroud. The ritual is brief, but losing a man remains a hard blow for the group. Despite the harshness of their life, pirates are motivated by the promise of loot. Spices, fabrics, precious metals, cocoa or indigo sell at high prices on clandestine markets. To unload their plunder, they rely on networks of intermediaries in certain tolerant ports, where soldiers and officials turn a blind eye in exchange for a cut. The crew exchanges goods for powder, provisions or equipment, some buying quality clothing, others saving up in hopes of a peaceful retirement. The reality remains grim. Many end up hanged, galley slaves, or drowned. The figure of the pirate divides contemporaries. For colonists, they are violent criminals. For others, rebels and liberators against imperial powers. Newspapers spread spectacular stories: capture of a Spanish galleon, escape of captains, feasts in secret coves. These episodes feed a romantic aura from the 18th century that would later inspire novelists. Regarding appearance, the red bandana is not the norm. Pirates rather wear felt hats, worn tricorns or caps, with looted clothing, loose breeches, flowing shirts, boots if they can afford them. The more dandy pirates sport a vest adorned with braids. Weapons are varied: cutlasses, flintlock pistols, muskets, sometimes blunderbusses. Their appearance, picturesque but calculated, aims to impress. The Jolly Roger flag is not always hoisted right away. Some first use a European flag to lower vigilance, then reveal the skull and crossbones to instill fear and prompt a quick surrender. The red flag, a sign of no quarter, threatens those who would be slow to yield. Far from folklore, these terror tactics often avoid unnecessary combat and force the surrender of a merchant ship. Pirate crews each have their customs. Some hoist the skull and crossbones, others a winged hourglass or a bleeding heart. These macabre symbols often suffice to scare off convoys. During a capture, pirates control the captain, search the holds, and decide to keep, sink, or use the ship as bait. The operation relies on strict discipline, blending voluntary adherence and fear of sanctions. In the evening, if the sea is calm, the crew drinks, sings, and shares an impromptu feast with dried meats, smoked fish, or exotic fruits taken from the enemy. These festive moments maintain morale and recall the freedom won. But the next day, tensions return. A cask is repaired, a saber sharpened, the crow's nest guard is mounted. The winds dictate the course. If the ship stalls, sea shanties and weapon inventory rhythm the weight without relaxing vigilance. Cohesion remains vital. Rivalries and wariness sometimes fuel mutinies, while some consider the pardon offered by a governor. The most daring refuse, aware that the Royal Navy or an imperial convoy will eventually catch up with them. This constant threat shapes their mentality, enjoying the present, sharing the loot equally, respecting the hunting contract and pirate fraternity. This fragile bond that unites them against the outside world. At the dawn of the 1690s, the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic remain marked by the European wars of the late 17th century. England and France vie for naval supremacy, while Spain attempts to preserve its monopoly on precious metals and colonial goods. Buccaneers, privateers with letters of marque, thrive by attacking enemy ships and port cities. Acting officially on behalf of a crown, they nonetheless remain close to piracy as soon as peace returns, and they continue their attacks. In 1688, the War of the League of Augsburg breaks out and continues until 1697. At the beginning of the 1690s, it fuels clashes between the French and English in the Caribbean. In Saint-Domingue and Port Royal, privateers capture enemy ships to resell in friendly ports, profits being shared between ship owners, crews, and sovereigns. The crews, often composed of sailors of various origins and former freed slaves, are distinguished by their efficiency with artillery. But the line between privateer and pirate remains tenuous. A foreign vessel can be seized under dubious pretexts, and if peace is signed in the meantime, the operation becomes illegal. Abuses multiply. Some captains exceed set limits and even attack Allied ships. The lack of communication between the mainland and colonies exacerbates the situation. The signing of a truce is known in the Caribbean only several weeks later, allowing buccaneers to continue their captures at the risk of triggering diplomatic crises. The Central Power finds itself trapped. Turning a blind eye endangers international agreements. Cracking down means pursuing former allies. The transition from buccaneer to pirate erupts in 1695, with the case of Henry Every. This English sailor seizes the Ganjai Sawai, a Mughal Empire ship laden with gold, silver, and fabrics from the Red Sea. Departing from La Coruña under a flag of convenience, Every conducts a daring assault and captures an immense booty without holding a valid letter of marque. The scandal is enormous. London must respond to protests from the Mughal authority, concerned about its commercial relations with England. Every instantly becomes a figure of international piracy, hunted in Europe, Africa, and America. While part of his crew is arrested, he disappears, leaving his fate a mystery. The capture of the Ganjai Sawai in 1695 marks a turning point. Piracy now surpasses the limits inherited from European wars. Until then, Caribbean buccaneering was part of the framework linked to colonial conflicts. With Henry Every, it becomes a global threat, capable of striking outside the Caribbean and targeting empires like the Mughal. This deed, impacting a key commercial partner of England, worries London merchants and reveals the danger of seeing former buccaneers turn to the Indian Ocean or other poorly controlled areas. In 1697, the Peace of Ryswick ends the War of the League of Augsburg. France and England sign an agreement intended to restore stability in Europe and their colonies. In the Caribbean, letters of marque are restricted or revoked. Attacking a friendly ship becomes piracy. Overnight, thousands of sailors find themselves without means of livelihood. In peacetime, the Royal Navy reduces its personnel and budget, leading these men to turn to illegal piracy. The habit of privateering had already blurred the line between a legitimate enemy and a civilian ship, accelerating the transition. In Nassau, on the island of New Providence in the Bahamas, the local economy, based on privateering and prize trading, collapses. Merchants turn away from a compromised port, supplies become scarce, and residents struggle to survive. The same situation strikes the island of Tortuga, a former haven for buccaneers and French privateers. In peaceful times, this system based on legalized plunder crumbles, infrastructure stagnates, legitimate trade routes shift, and shipyards close due to lack of orders. Many inhabitants then choose piracy. At the same time, sugar plantations experienced decisive growth, notably in Saint-Domingue, Barbados, and Jamaica. Sugar, now produced en masse, becomes the cornerstone of the colonial economy. This prosperity attracts smugglers and pirates. Rum and African slaves fuel parallel trades, while sea routes fill with vessels loaded with alcohol, materials, and captives. For demobilized privateers, these routes represent ideal targets. Authorities attempt to suppress or channel these practices, but the weakness of garrisons and the vastness of the archipelagos make control difficult. England, which regains some of its West Indian possessions, strengthens its naval patrols to protect the legal sugar trade and limit piracy. But the Royal Navy, already reduced in numbers, must also monitor the British approaches and transatlantic routes. Some corrupt officers turn a blind eye for a share of the loot, making repression inconsistent. The line between tolerated and repressed piracy often depends on the relationships between captains and local authorities. In France, despite the Peace of Ryswick, signed in 1697, governors cannot control every anchorage on the coast of Saint-Domingue. Spain, for its part, attempts to drive illegal settlers from Cuba and Santo Domingo, but lacks warships. In this context, many former privateers, deprived of letters of marque, form small autonomous companies and attack sugar or slave cargoes. Peace does not erase rivalries, tensions between French and English traders, colonial competition between England and Spain. Legal loopholes abound. A Dutch ship carrying products for the Spaniards can become a target. Pirates justify their attacks with false mandates or old orders. The Peace of Ryswick resolves nothing. Slow communications and unstable alliances fuel skirmishes. Colonial archives are full of complaints from ship owners against vessels without clear flags, sailing under deceptive flags. Many former privateers thus turn to piracy. Some islands profit from smuggling. Local merchants buy seized sugar or rum at low prices, then resell them clandestinely. The ships involved cultivate secrecy, taking detours and exchanging their cargoes in small hidden coves. Pirates take their share of the sugar bounty without plantations. In the long run, this way of life eludes authorities' control. Ransomed colonists demand reinforcements from the mother country, and governors face complaints and diplomatic pressures. The war ends, but insecurity at sea persists, threatening trade exchanges. While Tortuga and Nassau decline, the capture of the Ganj I Sawai by Henry Every in 1695 reveals that large-scale piracy prospers on eastern routes. The Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, and the African coasts attract adventurers in search of Mughal or Portuguese riches. In the Caribbean, Independent companies multiply, attacking all nations indiscriminately. In the taverns of New Providence and Kingston, every becomes a myth. A simple sailor turned king of the pirates, untraceable with his chests of Mughal gold. Legally, the definition of a pirate is now clear. He attacks without a valid mandate. But in practice, ambiguity remains. Governors still issue unofficial safe conducts, hoping to profit from the loot. Captains change allegiances according to opportunities. Rejected by France, some take refuge with the Dutch. When a piratical act provokes a complaint, they disappear at sea and reappear under another name. The geography of the Antilles, made up of islands, islets, and isolated coves, facilitates this mobility and makes pursuit difficult. The end of the War of the League of Augsburg and the Peace of Ryswick in 1697 favored the emergence of an autonomous piracy, distinct from legal privateering. In this economic context, dominated by sugar, rum, and the slave trade, many demobilized privateers became pirates, continuing a life based on maritime plunder. The tales of Henry Every's companions, enriched by the loot taken from the Mughal ship Gunja-i-Sawai, fueled the dreams of unemployed sailors. After 1697, normalization failed. On remote islands, former buccaneers refused to return to being farmers or fishermen. Used to arms, navigation, and booty, they rejected royal authority. Without war, they no longer received letters of marque, but the merchant fleet was teeming with riches. Many preferred to risk the gallows, boarded fast sloops, and attacked isolated brigs, selling their spoils on the black markets. Piracy then spread to the Caribbean, the North Atlantic, the Azores, and the African coasts where slavers sailed. England alternated between amnesties and punitive expeditions. France attempted to redirect its buccaneers towards Louisiana or the Mississippi. But these men, attached to their freedom and community life, mistrusted governments capable of employing them one day and condemning them the next. Around 1700, the War of Spanish Succession rekindled European tensions. Some sailors hoped to become privateers again, but the instability of letters of marque called for caution. Every's precedent reminded that a single capture could enrich a crew or trigger a diplomatic scandal. Between 1698 and 1700, colonial garrisons struggled to contain piracy. In the ports of Jamaica, Martinique, or Guadeloupe, the excess of available sailors fueled clandestine expeditions. In Kingston or Petit Goave, a few rumors were enough to arm a sloop and take to the sea under a black flag. Spanish archives then denounced boardings committed by ships presented as French or English, in violation of the Peace of Ryswick. This transition from buccaneer privateer to modern pirate was accompanied by an evolution in the collective imagination. By the end of the 17th century, the buccaneer was still perceived as a patriotic war hero or a bold adventurer, but the figure of the pirate became that of an international outlaw striking all merchant fleets. Tavern songs and travel tales valued the quest for freedom and the cosmopolitanism of the crews. Mutiny, camaraderie over loot, and extreme violence fed the legend, reinforced by episodes like the attack on the Gunja-i-Sawai. For merchants, it was a nightmare. For former privateers, an inspiration to challenge the world economic order. At the beginning of the 18th century, the War of Spanish Succession, which began in 1701, plunged Europe into chaos. Louis XIV sought to place a Bourbon on the Spanish throne, facing England, the Dutch Republic, and Austria. The oceans became battlefields, Privateers, armed with letters of marque, captured enemy ships, saturating the maritime courts. This war favored a tolerated piracy as long as it weakened the adversary. The Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 ended the conflict. England obtained the Asiento de Negros. France kept a Bourbon in Spain, but ceded some ambitions. Many demobilized privateers, unemployed, chose piracy. The Atlantic, the Caribbean, and the Indian Ocean became their hunting grounds, and Nassau, in the Bahamas, their capital. On New Providence Island, pirates organized an informal governance known as pirate democracy, where captains and crews made decisions collectively. Nassau's taverns served as places of alliances, intelligence exchanges, and raid preparations, forming an informal maritime confederation. Among these figures, Edward Teach, known as Blackbeard, born in England, perhaps in Bristol, started as a privateer during the War of Succession, before becoming a pirate in the Bahamas. In 1718, he blockaded the port of Charleston and held notables hostage to obtain medicine and supplies. His terrifying staging, notably his beard laced with lit hemp fuses, forged his legend. His captures enriched his crew and fueled rumors of hidden treasures, but he acted within a fraternity of pirates, multiplying daring feats. Calico Jack Rackham, nicknamed for his colorful calico pants, formed a mixed crew with two famous women, Anne Bonny and Mary Red. They participated in the raids sword in hand and inspired their companions. In 1720, their ship was captured by Commodore Jonathan Barnett. Several pirates, drunk, quickly surrendered, but Anne and Mary resisted before being overwhelmed. Jack was hanged, while the two women obtained a reprieve by claiming pregnancy. Rackham left to posterity the Jolly Roger flag with crossed swords, although he may not have been the inventor. Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart, probably Welsh, imposed strict discipline, alcohol rationed, gambling limited, spoils shared, and compensation for the injured. Thanks to this organization and his audacity, he captured over 400 ships, from the Atlantic Caribbean to the Gulf of Guinea. His crews sometimes elected their officers, and he mixed charisma, skillful strategies, and diplomatic pressures to strengthen his authority. Piracy was part of the triangular trade linking Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Manufactured goods for African captives, slaves sold to the colonies, then a return of colonial goods, sugar, tobacco, indigo. Pirates struck at each stage, seizing cargoes and precious metals, notably Spanish pieces of eight. The plunder was sold on the black market, enriching complicit ports like Nassau. Violence remained omnipresent. Some pirates, like Black Caesar, a freed former slave, gained a formidable reputation through torture. He notably used chili powder on wounds or forced it to be inhaled to extract confessions. Other atrocities, from whipping to summary execution, complemented this climate of terror that often pushed ships to surrender without a fight. The instability of the time was reflected in the inability of great powers to control the seas. French privateers like Lamberts and Ducasse had ravaged during the War of the Spanish Succession, while the English struggled to protect their trade routes despite prize courts overwhelmed by captures. After 1713, the War of Privateering dwindled, and many sailors turned to piracy. In warm waters, the line between privateer and pirate blurred. Nassau became the symbol of this drift. A port turned into a lawless haven where gold and freedom took precedence over order, It was no longer about serving a kingdom, but seizing any profit, even if it meant joining former enemies. This mentality, fueled by an uncertain context, gave the Golden Age its legendary reputation. Hundreds of buccaneers flocked, ready to risk everything to live as masters of the seas. The appointment of Woodes Rogers as governor of the Bahamas in 1717 was set in this context. The War of the Spanish Succession, ended in 1713 by the Treaties of Utrecht, had upset colonial power. In the Bahamas, demobilized pirates and privateers had turned Nassau into an uncontrolled refuge. Unemployed sailors continued piracy and smuggling, preventing any stable authority in New Providence. The British government, keen to protect its interests, entrusted Rogers with the mission of restoring order. Born in England around 1679, Rogers was himself a former privateer. Between 1708 and 1711, he made a remarkable world tour, acquiring naval experience and diplomatic skill. His successes against Spanish ships made him famous and apt to negotiate with buccaneers. Deemed ideal for restoring discipline, he knew their networks and enjoyed a solid reputation. Upon arriving in Nassau, Rogers found an anarchic town. Wooden shacks, ruined forts, crowded taverns, dubious flags, and dilapidated ships used for smuggling rum, sugar, or slaves. The surroundings hid abandoned cannons and hidden gunpowder stocks, signs of general distrust. Even the inhabitants indirectly benefited from this economy. Rogers understood that he could not impose his authority without local support, and combined repression with royal pardon to attract the less hardened pirates. The Act of Grace, promulgated by the British Crown, formed the core of Woodes Rogers' peacekeeping strategy. This edict grants amnesty to any pirate renouncing their illegal profession and swearing allegiance to the king. Rogers relied on the psychological effect. Many pirates were not so by taste for violence, but as a result of wars and economic crises. The idea of pardon circulated in Nassau, stirring debates and tensions. Benjamin Hornigold, a former privateer turned pirate, chooses to accept the pardon. Charismatic, yet pragmatic, he becomes a valuable ally for Rogers. He knows the hideouts, the crews, and the organization of the captains. He hopes to escape the gallows and maintain a certain status. But others, like Charles Vane and Jack Rackham, known as Calico Jack, refuse to capitulate, attached to their freedom and loot. Faced with this resistance, Rogers assembles an anti-piracy fleet. He obtains funds from the Crown to arm several war sloops, fast and maneuverable in the shallow waters of the Bahamas. Each vessel, equipped with 24-pound cannons, can inflict heavy damage at close range. Rogers recruits former Royal Navy sailors, joined by volunteers benefiting from the Act of Grace. The goal is not only to defend Nassau, but also to psychologically impose the end of impunity. The initial successes remain modest, capturing small boats, seizing stocks of gunpowder, neutralizing isolated pirates. But the effect is real. Some captains flee to other Caribbean hideouts or to the American coast. It is then that the hunt for Edward Teach, nicknamed Blackbeard, is announced. Blackbeard, an English pirate, gained a reputation by terrorizing the Atlantic sea routes. His dark beard, sometimes intertwined with burning fuses, reinforced his terrifying aura. Commanding several ships, including the Queen Anne's Revenge, He used daring tactics like port blockades. Between 1717 and 1718, his name struck fear along the Carolina coast and the entrance to the Caribbean Sea. Fleeing merchants, abandoned cargoes, crippled merchant shipping. Convinced of his impunity, he refuses the pardon offered by Woodes Rogers. In 1718, the colonies of North Carolina and Virginia organize his pursuit. Blackbeard attempts to escape his pursuers through the inlets and the complicity of local officials, but his movements become predictable due to his constant needs for supplies, water, and repairs. Clues lead to Ocracoke, on the coast of North Carolina. In November 1718, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Alexander Spotswood, assigns Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy the mission to finish him. Aboard 2 fast sloops, including the Adventure, Maynard prepares for a close encounter. On November 22, 1718, the battle erupts in Ocracoke Inlet. Blackbeard, better armed but less mobile, bombards the sloops and inflicts heavy losses. Maynard then hides some of his men below deck, giving the illusion of defeat. Fooled, Blackbeard chooses to board. As he comes aboard, the soldiers emerge and surround his men. The pirate, grievously injured multiple times, fights until his death after receiving about 20 blows. His body is decapitated on colonial orders. His head is hung from the bowsprit of Maynard's sloop to prove the end of the threat and to deter other pirates. The news spreads quickly. Merchants celebrate their deliverance, while pirates hesitate between accepting the pardon, fleeing to other waters, or desperate resistance. For Woodes Rogers, the naval victory is decisive. It strengthens his legitimacy and weakens the main pirate leaders. The strongholds of New Providence gradually fall through arrest or submission to the Act of Grace. Thanks to Hornigold and new allies, Rogers obtains information on the clandestine trade routes of Vane and Rackham. Pirate shipyards are dismantled, weapon caches confiscated, and Nassau sees its fortifications reinforced. Tension rises between those who accept peace and the diehards. Charles Vane, known for his aggressiveness, conducts a few more raids, but his ship is captured and his crew surrenders. Jack Rackham, known as Calico Jack, continues his attacks with Anne Bonny and Mary Red, but he too is eventually captured in the remote islands. The trials follow, marked by numerous testimonies and unyielding justice. After 1718, Nassau, until then chaotic, transforms into a colonial post. Rogers combats corruption, establishes patrols, brings in administrators from London, and opens new commercial prospects. Some former pirates convert to skilled pilots. The local economy is structured around warehouses and secure exchanges, consolidating the British Empire. The decline of piracy leads to summary trials in the Caribbean and on the American coast. In Nassau, public executions multiply, with gallows serving as a warning. Even the slightest accusation of piracy can lead to the noose, despite a few judges being more cautious towards those invoking the Act of Grace. Many captives, notably former companions of Vane or Blackbeard, are transferred to Jamaica. Port Royal, ravaged by the 1692 earthquake, has given way to Kingston, which has become the administrative and judicial center. Nevertheless, spectacular executions continue there to remind everyone of the limits of royal clemency. The Jamaican archives recount swift trials, an act of piracy observed, a merchant's testimony, and the hanging follows. In this climate, it becomes almost impossible for pirates to plead ignorance of the act of grace. Witnesses describe lines of condemned men awaiting their turn under the watchful eyes of a crowd that came to watch, while former companions, terrified, keep their distance to avoid suspicion. Over the months, the crackdown intensifies under the impetus of Governor Woodes Rogers and the direct support of the Crown. The goal is clear: to secure maritime routes for transatlantic trade and end the pirates' freedom. Each public execution becomes a warning, reported by London gazettes, that emphasize the forced repentance or defiance of the condemned. During hangings, bodies are sometimes displayed in iron gibbets near ports to prolong the deterrent effect. In Jamaica, several dozen executions take place in 1718, including those of major names in piracy. Some request a priest, others defy until the end, but all end in the same manner. Port Royal, commonly referred to as Kingston, becomes the center of collective condemnations. Serial judgments group piracy cases together under heavy surveillance to prevent mutinies and escapes. Hangings succeed one another quickly, marking a decisive step in the pacification desired by Woodes Rogers and the Crown. Massive capture and execution of ex-privateers, at the price of a bloody example, intended to haunt the imagination of aspiring pirates for a long time. Between 1718 and 1730, the Atlantic world radically changed its approach to piracy, once tolerated when it served privateering. The great European empires now wanted to consolidate their colonies and secure their maritime routes. The British Crown enacted the Piracy Act in 1717 and the Piracy Suppression Act in 1721, defining piracy as a capital crime and giving authority to colonial officers and governors to capture and judge brigands. The objective was to eliminate insecurity in the Caribbean, off the coast of Africa, and into the Indian Ocean. After the War of the Spanish Succession ended in 1713, European powers also sought to stabilize global commerce. The itinerant Admiralty courts supplemented this system. Instead of transferring prisoners to England, colonial courts-martial decided quickly. Led by hanging judges known for their severity, they often condemned to public hanging, notably at Gallows Point. Authorities encouraged the attendance of residents to reinforce the deterrent effect. Faced with this repression, the remaining active pirates attempted to flee, negotiate a royal pardon, or seek to reinvent themselves. Simultaneously, rival European powers began to cooperate. The French and Spanish participated in patrols and exchanged information with the English. Former privateers, settled in isolated bays, exploited their knowledge of currents, archipelagos, mangroves, and channels to evade official ships. The results were uneven. Some groups were neutralized, but many escaped thanks to the complex geography and persistent rivalries between captains. Nevertheless, this international cooperation marked a strategic turning point in the fight against piracy. The last great figure of the Golden Age of Piracy was Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart. In the 1720s, he roamed the Atlantic, attacking English, Portuguese, and French ships, reaching the coasts of Brazil and sometimes the North Atlantic. His success was based on strict discipline, a fleet of 4 ships, an effective strategy, and a severe code prohibiting gambling and punishing drunkenness. His crew, obedient and committed to the fair distribution of loot, followed him fervently. Roberts accumulated wealth in precious metals, spices, and manufactured goods, evading European navies for a long time. His career ended in 1722 during the Battle of Cape Lopez. Off the coast of West Africa, a key area of the triangular trade, Roberts was anchored for repairs when Captain Challoner Ogle's British squadron attacked him. The battle was fierce. Aboard the Royal Fortune, Roberts was mortally wounded by a cannon shot. According to some accounts, his body was thrown into the sea to prevent it from being displayed. His men were captured and tried. His death deprived Atlantic piracy of its most charismatic leader and marked its decline. After 1722, European opinion considered the pirate threat to be under control, but smaller bands persisted. Some pirates accepted royal pardons offered by colonial powers. Others turned to smuggling or found refuge in loosely controlled areas like the bayous of Louisiana or Spanish Florida. With small, fast ships, they discreetly transported goods and illicit cargoes, often tolerated by interested local authorities. In French Louisiana, smuggling involved illegally introduced African slaves, indigo, and other colonial goods. Some administrators profited from these flows, while others led punitive expeditions to maintain order and protect merchants paying taxes and monopolies. The old pirate bases, notably Barataria, became transit points for prohibited goods. These men, having abandoned the black flag and frontal attacks, now acted as smugglers or fishermen, hiding their activities in the marshes and along the coastline. The depletion of easy targets on the high seas accelerated the shift towards smuggling. Spanish and English convoys were better escorted, the Royal Navy strengthened its presence in the Caribbean, and new maritime routes forced pirates to travel longer distances. The Piracy Act, then the Piracy Suppression Act, were recalled in ports by posters promising rewards for denunciations. Some merchant ships equipped themselves with cannons or recruited seasoned sailors. Meanwhile, local economies structured around sugar, tobacco, and other colonial commodities. Pirates refusing to adapt were hunted, deprived of political support, and faced enormous risks for increasingly scarce gains. Many then turned to the clandestine supply of wood, dyes, and slaves for the plantations of the Gulf of Mexico. Mahogany, logwood, and other valuable woods passed through former pirate channels, using their networks and vessels adapted to the coasts. Out of reach of royal amnesty, they favored isolated coves over monitored major ports, where informal markets took place. This trade remained risky: seizures, denunciations, rivalries, but represented a lesser evil compared to active piracy. These captains were no longer famous freebooters, but simple traffickers integrated into an underground trade. The survival of the former pirates was now played out in the shadows, far from the glorified boardings of the past. From the 1740s onward, the geopolitical landscape of the Caribbean and the American continent was disrupted by European rivalries. The War of Jenkins' Ear, from 1739 to 1748, pitted England against Spain over sugar outposts and Plata routes. The conflict owes its name to an incident where Spanish coast guards cut off the ear of British smuggler Robert Jenkins, scandalizing English opinion. Multiple squadrons then patrolled tropical waters, and privateers, armed with letters of marque, intercepted enemy vessels. Legal privateering becomes an effective tool again to weaken the enemy's economy. The privateers, supported by governments, seize the cargoes protected by rival monarchies. From Havana to Kingston, port offices issue certificates of boarding. Each prize brings a percentage to ship owners and colonial governors, while crews, attracted by the booty, defy the powerful Spanish Navy. A few years later, the 7 Years' War from 1756 to 1763 intensifies maritime competition. This global conflict pits France and Great Britain against each other in Europe, the Atlantic, and the West Indies. Spain, linked to France through the family compacts, enters the war. British privateers are given carte blanche against French and Spanish ships, and smuggling maintains insecurity on the Gulf of Mexico routes. The Treaty of Paris of 1763 redraws the colonial map. France cedes Canada and several islands. Spain recovers Louisiana but loses Florida. In the Caribbean, commercial stakes increase. Shortly after, the American War of Independence, from 1775 to 1783, once again disrupts the balance. Supported by France, the rebels of the 13 colonies issue their own letters of marque to attack the Royal Navy and seize munitions, food, and supplies essential to the rebellion. In this context, Creole figures emerge. José Camps y Rigual, a captain from a local family, builds a reputation as a skilled navigator. Aboard his sloop Intrepido, armed with a privateering letter, he intercepts ships threatening his trade. His alliances with Creole traders ensure him with logistical bases where he can sell his prizes, repair his sails, and recruit new sailors. At the end of the 18th century, the Haitian Revolution, which began in 1791 in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, shakes the region. Slave and freedmen insurrections degenerate into an international conflict. Clandestine liaisons, provided by small ships like Le Comité, bring weapons, food, revolutionary leaders, and secret documents, evading gunboats. Great Britain temporarily occupies some coastal cities, while Spain, present in the east, tries to contain the rebellion. Royalist, Republican, or simple adventurer, privateers take advantage of the disorder to attack convoys. At the same time, in the Gulf of Mexico, Jean Lafitte emerges, born in the 1780s. Settled in Barataria, Louisiana, he turns this swampy area into a smuggling haven. After the Louisiana Purchase by the United States in 1803, authorities oscillate between secret agreements and pursuing him. During the Anglo-American War of 1812, Great Britain threatens New Orleans. Courted by both camps, Lafitte refuses the British offer and supports General Andrew Jackson. In 1815, during the Battle of New Orleans, he provides artillery and ships, earning him an official amnesty. Meanwhile, Spain sees its Latin American empire crumble. Simón Bolívar relies on corsarios, supported by Dutch islands like Curaçao and Aruba, to harass Spanish convoys and supply rebel armies. Ports like Cartagena and La Guaira become centers of privateering and logistics, where Creole officers, mercenaries, and European advisors mingle. The new South American republics issue their own letters of marque, sometimes validated by French or British officers, attracting former French privateers and many foreign sailors. Investors from London and Amsterdam finance armed schooners, providing artillery and equipment to the insurgents. In 1808, Napoleon forces the abdication of Ferdinand VII, plunging Spain into confusion. The colonies doubt their legitimacy, and uprisings multiply. At sea, the corsarios, often supported by patriots, take advantage of Spanish weakness to strike harder. In 1804, Haiti proclaims its independence and becomes the first Black republic to emerge from a servile revolution. This precedent inspires Caribbean libertarian movements, proving it is possible to overthrow colonial powers. Privateers affiliated with Haiti appear, attacking Spanish brigantines and hostile merchant ships. The ports of Jérémie and Port-au-Prince serve as havens for some captains. European governments struggle to follow these upheavals, while colonial elites fear the revolutionary contagion. In 1815, Europe emerged exhausted from the Napoleonic Wars, and the Congress of Vienna attempted to restore monarchical balance. In the American colonies, this context favored proponents of emancipation. Corsairs, once seen as marauders, became political agents in the service of Republican propaganda. As Spain lost its possessions, new local elites sought to build their institutions inspired by freedom and autonomy. On the Caribbean coasts, the transition of corsairs to patriotic defenders took hold, gained popular support, and accelerated the imperial collapse. Also in 1815, Bolívar supporters consolidated their bases from Caracas to Cartagena. Corsairs broke the Spanish blockade and formed maritime caravans conveying arms, journalists, and printers tasked with spreading revolutionary ideas. Royalist officers, abandoned by Madrid, retreated to a few coastal fortresses, while the financial collapse of the crown hastened their defeat. Everywhere, corsairs supported the establishment of the new Creole republics. Their role, having become political, illustrated the evolution of privateering in America. Starting in 1815, the end of the Napoleonic Wars opened new geopolitical dynamics, reorganizing naval and commercial forces. The United Kingdom, Spain, France, and the United States sought to secure their transoceanic routes. Maritime traffic, vital for industrial growth, and the trade of cotton, sugar, and coffee, could no longer tolerate violence at sea. The pirate activity, prosperous until the early 18th century, faced increasing military and diplomatic pressure. During the first third of the 19th century, Anglo-Spanish and Franco-British naval treaties marked a turning point. The United Kingdom invested heavily in the Royal Navy to intercept suspicious ships off the coasts of Africa and the Caribbean. These patrols, officially intended to eradicate illegal slave trading, extended British policy after the abolition of the slave trade in 1807 and slavery in 1833. Other nations, including Spain, reluctantly signed agreements allowing forced inspections of their ships. Mixed naval commissions judged captains caught in the act of trafficking or looting. The fight against piracy was also explained by the rise of the steam navy. The first military prototypes appeared in the 1810s and 1820s, then improved. In the second half of the century, iron hulls, built from 1840 onward, and rifled cannons gave Western fleets a decisive advantage. Pirates, once protected by the maneuverability of their schooners, could not compete with fast, heavily armed steam corvettes. These innovations allowed the formation of squadrons specialized in hunting pirates and smuggling ships. Refugee ports were encircled, steam allowed ascent of estuaries, passage through straits, and surprised buccaneers in their havens. The last piracy hotspots around Cuba, the Dutch Antilles, or the Bahamas slowly disappeared. Between 1815 and 1870, British diplomacy also imposed strict repression against clandestine trading through a series of bilateral and multilateral agreements. The British colony of the Cayman Islands, located south of Cuba and west of Jamaica, played a central role as a pilot station. Since the 18th century, these islands, populated by sailors, Anglo-Saxon expatriates, and freed slaves, served as a relay for Caribbean navigation. Their strategic position attracted the attention of the Crown. An administrative headquarters was established there to monitor merchant shipping and provide a forward base for maritime policing. Warehouses stored supplies, coal, and armaments intended for patrols. As early as the 1830s, the Royal Navy permanently stationed small sloops to intercept suspicious ships between Jamaica, Cuba, and the Gulf of Honduras. The local prosperity, based on fishing and port services, grew thanks to the presence of the British Navy, which set up field hospitals and employed the population in naval maintenance. The surroundings of the Mosquito Coast, along the coast of Nicaragua and Honduras, also attract European interest. The region is inhabited by the Mosquitos and the Garifunas, the latter descending from mixed-race ancestry between deported Africans and Caribbean Amerindians, settled by the British in the 18th century after their expulsion from St. Vincent. Some factions engage in the smuggling of wood, particularly mahogany, alongside Creole and mixed-race traders. This illegal trade, carried out in isolated river camps, sometimes approaches piracy, with ships passing by being ransomed. However, the intensification of British patrols and diplomatic pressure gradually reduced these activities. The once favorable topography for ambushes loses its effectiveness against steamships capable of crossing river bars and launching small motorized boats into the rivers. In the 19th century, public opinion redefined the image of adventurers at sea. Thus emerges filibusterism, with the most notable example being William Walker's expedition to Nicaragua in the 1850s. Born in the United States, Walker leads unauthorized military campaigns in Central America to impose his regimes. In 1855, he lands in Nicaragua with a few dozen supporters, exploits local conflicts, and seizes Grenada. In 1856, he proclaims himself president, leading to a war against a coalition of neighboring countries. European and American newspapers describe him as a new corsair or a land pirate, as he governs by force. His downfall in 1857, followed by his execution in Honduras in 1860, marks a semantic shift. People no longer speak only of pirates linked to looting at sea, but of political filibusters, adventurers with territorial ambitions and lasting power. Meanwhile, classic piracy is reduced to rare isolated incidents, often related to the poverty of demobilized sailors or the smuggling of slaves in remote areas of the Atlantic. To maintain order, states adopt strengthened repressive laws. In France, England, and the United States, the legal definition of piracy extends to include any illegal attack at sea, regardless of the flag flown. Special tribunals, sometimes inherited from the model of the 18th century admiralty courts, continue to function. They impose penalties of imprisonment or death, although the latter gradually disappears from Western judicial practices at the turn of the 20th century. A form of international coordination is established, facilitating the extradition of individuals caught in one country to be tried in another, further complicating the task of the last traditional pirates. To this judicial pursuit are added economic developments, the emergence of regular steamship lines, ensuring connections between Europe, America, and Africa, and the rising power of maritime insurance companies, which push ship owners to secure their voyages by hiring onboard riflemen or resorting to military corvette escorts. Simultaneously, the turbulent political context of Hispanic America, marked by successive independences from Spain between 1810 and 1830, reduces naval coherence and presence in some areas of the continent. But these new states can hardly afford to tolerate pirates, who would quickly attack their own fragile trade. Consequently, even though some revolutionary movements or local caudillos resort to small makeshift fleets for attempted coups, their main goal remains territorial conquest or the exploration of mineral riches, not the random plundering of ships. The discourse on the sea becomes professionalized. People talk less about isolated bandits and more about national navies being formed, even if the financial resources of these young countries are limited. During this time, mindsets are evolving in Europe and North America. Pirate adventures captivate literary fascination. From the early 19th century, novelists and poets, inspired by the imagination of maritime districts and Caribbean folklore, compose stories that exalt the dark charm of buccaneers. The works of Lord Byron or Walter Scott already echo the romantic figure of the corsair. Gradually, the pirate becomes a literary archetype. They are depicted as rebellious, indomitable beings in conflict with established orders. By the end of the century, the adventure novel emerges as a popular genre, notably illustrated by the writings of Washington Irving or, a bit later, those that would inspire Robert Louis Stevenson. In the United States, The Pirate Mary Red and The Legend of Blackbeard pique the curiosity of readers in search of exotic epics. Outside of libraries and newspapers, fairground shows or traveling exhibitions seize upon the image of old pirates. Comedies, operettas, and theatrical performances feature one-eyed captains, parrots perched on shoulders, and chests full of treasures. It is forgotten that the vast majority of participants in the previous century's piracy lived amid violence, disease, and precarity. Only the romanticized idea of a free, unrestrained life persists. The black flags, once flown to terrify merchant ships, become decorative motifs in some inns or on the storefronts of curiosity shops. Western governments only moderately oppose this mythification, which now has no impact on maritime security. On the contrary, they sometimes see it as an opportunity to control the historical narrative, steering it toward a more picturesque dimension. In some nascent museums in major European capitals, boarding weapons and navigational charts claimed to have belonged to pirates are displayed. These relics, authentic or sometimes reinvented, fuel the myth of a bygone Golden Age. The transformation of port infrastructures and the increased use of steam hasten the disappearance of piracy. In New Orleans, connected by steamers to the Mississippi and the Gulf of Mexico, customs controls are strengthened. The old smuggling routes lose their relevance. Maritime companies crush illegal competition, and the rare pirates encounter ships that are too powerful, and the submarine telegraph, introduced at sea in the 1850s. The modernized forts and hydrographic surveys render useless the hideouts once protected by reefs. In the last decades of the 19th century, opportunities for plunder diminish. Spain, the United Kingdom, and other powers redirect their flows. The silver treasures of Latin America decline with independence, and new mining channels, such as those in Mexico, emerge. The great transatlantic ships now carry emigrants rather than chests of wealth. The sea is crisscrossed by imperial navies and international law. From 1815 to 1860, the Royal Navy conducts an intense fight against the slave trade, patrolling off the coast of West Africa, intercepting slave ships, and bringing their captains to mixed courts in Sierra Leone or Barbados. Even after abolition, the hunt for slave brigs continues, drawing up the complicity between pirates and traffickers. Deprived of networks, some Caribbean fugitives turn to smuggling tobacco, alcohol, or opium. Networks persist in Central America or the Guianas, but this no longer constitutes open piracy. Local leaders sometimes surround themselves with filibuster mercenaries, like William Walker in Nicaragua, but these ventures fail under international pressure. In the 19th century, the era of pirate sailing ships slips into legend. Exotic tales, treasure maps, and fake parchments captivate an audience eager for mystery. Unsuccessful excavations make headlines and reinforce the myth of a Caribbean sea full of hidden gold. At the turn of the 20th century, the press keeps alive the rumor of last pirates, while colonial governors and the Royal Navy confirm that the threat is extinguished. A few troublemakers are exhibited in chains, fueling literary and later cinematic imagination. Many families in the West Indies claim to own pirate artifacts, sabers, flintlock pistols, chest doors, logbooks. These relics circulate among collectors and are displayed in major cities in the north. This quest for authenticity intertwines with romantic nostalgia. The Pirate of the Caribbean embodies an exoticism that contrasts with industrial modernity. In the United States, the Florida coast attracts a bourgeoisie seeking leisure in the sun. Piracy, stripped of its violence, becomes a tourist argument, reinforced by legends surrounding Key West. In the second half of the 19th century, sail-powered ships gave way to steam. European diplomacy, Latin American republics, and a young American navy reduced the space for outlaws. The last clans, confined to isolated shores, limited themselves to threatening small coasters or intervening in local conflicts to gain temporary impunity. These episodes, reported by the press, maintain the idea of surviving piracy, but without strategic breadth or tolerance as in previous centuries. By the end of the 19th century, the term pirate gave way to smuggler or adventurer. The exploits of Bartholomew Roberts or Blackbeard remain in the collective memory, but belong to a distant era, reinterpreted and staged. This mythification is amplified in the 20th century, fueled by children's literature, theater, and then cinema, which set the stereotypical image of the pirate with a wooden leg and a parrot. Meanwhile, historians explore archives to distinguish legend from socio-economic reality, while Spanish, English, or French fortifications recall the long struggle that led to the gradual extinction of classical piracy.